Hello there, everybody, and welcome. God bless all of you today. I'm going to let a few people trickle in. Um, and while I'm going to talk a little bit about what I want this live stream to do. Basically, this is going to be one of my raw takes, one of my unscripted, off the cuff sort of opinion pieces about whatever comes to mind. And today I wanted to talk a bit about the problems with uh, the typical anti-SJW stuff, right? Because that's what's important in life. Anti-SJW kind of stuff. I'm being facetious here, but there is a broader point to this, and I have done videos in the past about the issues with left-wing infiltration into um, into these things called into pop culture, into games and movies and books. If you want the full rundown on that, you should watch my videos, The Eternal Bellyachers, and also my video on representation and moral norms. And basically, what it comes down to is that leftism is promoting a set of very bad, evil norms into the media, and they do this through what is called representation. They try to make you think that the kinds of things they want normal are already normal, so that you already accept them. And this is a common argument you see on the left. It goes all the way back. It's been going back for a long time. I think the earliest time I've seen people use this argument was what's his face? The guy who it was this guy who created he created a book, the male sex. He was this evil sexologist guy who raped children. Um, it's on the top of my head. Uh, it's on the top of my head. The Alfred Kinsey. Kinsey, yes, that was his name. Alfred Kinsey. He was the mid 20th century sexologist who created this he created this book called the male sex, the human male. Sorry, it was called the human male, or sexual behavior in the human male. And in that book, he made the claim that um, behaviors that were widely seen as sexually degenerate today, back then, during the 1940s, and and a lot of those behaviors would be still sexually degenerate today. He claimed that those behaviors were very common. He claimed that 10% of Americans were homosexual, that an overwhelming majority of people had extramarital affairs. He claimed that a large number of people, a substantial number of people, engaged in bestiality. It's all this ridiculous stuff. And it turns out he was mostly getting his numbers from the populations in prisons. Yeah, he was basically, in the words of Edward Fazer, is America's Lysenko, and his work is held up as the model for how to do um, sexology in modern America. All these gay studies, queer studies stuff follow after him, and for good reason. It was good at propagandizing to the people that, hey, You shouldn't treat this as abnormal because it's very common. Of course, that's not how morality is supposed to work. Um, the norms that govern morality aren't set by the norms of a culture necessarily. They're set by the norms that are intrinsic to human nature. That's the natural law. It's not right to do something just because everybody is doing it. But that's the kind of mindset the left engenders into people. They try to make everybody think. They first give you this democratic view of morality that says if something is popular, then it's right, and then they try to propagandize you with stuff like representation to show you, hey, everything is, hey, if everybody else is doing this thing, so therefore you should do it too. And because of the way human psychology works, thanks to mimesis, people buy into this, which is why you see polling numbers showing that um, people think that an overwhelming number of people are trans and gay and black and other minorities. There are people out there who think that blacks make up 40 something percent of the population when they in fact make up only 13%. Um, and that is the reason why Disney and other companies push for this representation, because the people in charge of all this, they have this political agenda that they're trying to push. They have these moral norms that they want to inculcate into the culture, and Rick Riordan is one of these people, and I'm going to get into that today. Um, all right. I see some good chats here. Um, let's see. Hello, I'm a new subscriber. I think you should make a video addressing online radtradism. Ah, radtradism. Do you mean the kind of radical traditionalist Catholics who disrespect the church and her authorities? You mean that kind of radtradism? Um, it's pretty easy to address them. There's not a lot of content to that. Um, it's pretty easy to address someone if you're a Catholic, if you truly believed in. Oh yeah, yes, okay. Well, if there's not much to address there, it's hard to make a whole video out of it because um, if you have if you believe in Catholicism, if you believe that the church has the authority that the Bible says it has, then you will respect the people for their office, even if you don't respect them for their character. Even if you think that the prelates in charge right now are bad, well, Jesus has advice for bad prelates. He says, "Do what they say, not as they do. Do what they say, not as they do, for they sit on the seat of Moses." And he was talking about the Pharisees, but you could apply that same principle to the chair of Saint Peter. Even if the person, if even if the person in charge is bad, you're supposed to respect them for their office. And you're supposed to, by the way, you're supposed to do this for government officials too. Even if you for Christians in general, because Romans 13 actually says that God put these people in charge. And keep in mind, Paul was speaking during the time the um, when the Roman government was killing Christians left, right, and center. Right? Christians are not anarchists. They don't have this kind of anti. Christians are not antinomian. They respect authority. All right. Um, hmm. So that's what all I'm going to say about that. Um, Percy Jackson book. I read Percy Jackson books when in middle school. I don't remember anything particularly subversive, but it's been a while. Well, I'm going to get into that today because I also read the Percy Jackson books when I was in middle school, and I loved them. Um, so that's why I wanted to. That's why I wanted to get into this, right? So I do have the Percy Jackson books. I still have them on my bookshelf, actually, after all these years. Um, I had the I've had them on my bookshelf. Let's see. You have so what is the recent controversy here? Well, I wanted to get into that. Weren't those always uber gay? Never read. Hey Ben, I'm glad to get into that. I think the author was always uber gay. Honestly, I think the author was always uber gay, and it becomes clearer the further you go into his books, into his bibliography. It starts out mild, but then it gets worse and worse. Um, and I'm going to get into that, right? So I fell into the Percy Jackson series mainly for its mythological references. Because if, in case you guys don't know, the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series is a kind of urban fantasy story starring a young man named Percy Jackson. And he is, well, Percy Jackson, he kind of has this problems in school. He's a kid with ADHD, inspired by Rick's own son, by the way. Because his own son has ADHD, and Percy he has trouble with bullies. He has trouble fitting in. He's dyslexic. He's ADHD. So it's kind of difficult for him. And then he discovers one day that he is a demigod. And as in, the Greek gods are still alive. Monsters and magic are there. Basically, the Greek myths are real. The monsters and the gods are still around. They've just relocated to America. And the and Percy is a demigod. And the reason he has ADHD and dyslexia is because that's part of his heritage. His dyslexia, his brain is wired to read ancient Greek and Latin, and his ADHD are his combat instincts. He is like all demigods. He's a natural born fighter, natural born warrior, and he goes to a camp called Camp Half Blood, and he discovers that he is the son of Poseidon, and that there is a prophecy that that the Oracle of Delphi has had given about the sons of the elder gods. The elder gods being the three the three Olympia the three sons of Kronos: Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. And the the thing about and so it's basically like Harry Potter, but instead of a British boarding school, it's an American summer camp. And instead of magic and wizards, it's magic and Greek mythology. And it's very, yeah, and it's very punchy. I liked it for a lot of reasons. I liked the mythological references. I liked how he was able to make jokes about them. he he basically the part of the humor in Percy Jackson is him finding a way to fit the monsters into the setting. So like you have the Sphinx the Sphinx is there, and she gives out like assigned quizzes and that are multiple choice instead of riddle, or you have you know you have Atlas. You have Atlas, the man, the Titan Atlas. He's working with he's working with these black ops guys. Or you have oh, you have there's a memorable moment where they discovered that the tribe of the Amazonians are in charge of the company Amazon. It's kind of funny that way. The other half of the part that I liked about the humor was just the kind of snarkiness. It's the punchiness. Uh, they, I mean, they have that kind of it has that kind of Joss Whedon type snarky, irreverent humor because it's told from the first person perspective of Percy, and Percy is kind of a mouthy kid who keeps getting into trouble. Uh, like, let me read some of and it shows up in the chapters too. Let me read to you the names of the names of the chapters the names of the chapters of this book. I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. Three old ladies knit the socks of death. Grover unexpectedly loses his pants. My mother teaches me bullfighting. Uh, I play pinnacle with a horse. I become supreme lord of the bathroom. My dinner goes up in smoke. We capture a flag. I am offered a quest. I ruin a perfectly good bus. We visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. We get advice from a poodle. I plunge to my death. I become a known fugitive. A god buys us cheeseburgers. We take a zebra to Vegas. We shop for waterbeds. Annabeth does obedience school. We found out the truth, sort of. I battle my jerk relative. I settle my tab. The prophecy comes true. So you have, and that's the general how he titles things in his books. He gives a kind of one line summary of the events of that chapter, but it's done in a kind of sardonic way, that that's very at the same time very blunt. And I really I that appealed to me, and it still appeals to me on some level because I enjoy characters with humor and good cheer, which this book had plenty of. I enjoy mythological references, and I liked to see the world that Rick Riordan was building. Apparently, according to the author, this that's not what the book was about. Apparently, according to the author, it's supposed to be about how people with ADHD are secretly people with superpowers, and it's this neurodiversity agenda. So I wanted to get and the reason why Percy Jackson came up in the news is because of Disney's casting selection. There's going to be a new Percy Jackson TV series. And the Percy Jackson TV series race swapped a few of the characters. I mean, they did this in the Percy Jackson movies. They completely changed things. They race swapped Grover to be like a stereotypical black guy, which is about I mean, I'd probably be more offended by I don't know. I mean, maybe I honestly sympathize with those SJW types who get offended on behalf of other races because I look at the depiction of Grover in the Percy Jackson movies and I am offended by proxy. It was just that bad. Yeah. Oh yeah, they did make one of the major characters gay in the later on in the books. Uh, Yeah, they ran Percy Jackson through the skin painter. Well, it's the thing is, it's Disney doing it, and I'm going to show you, um, Disney. I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. Um, you have Disney with Reimagine Tomorrow, and this is from Bounding into Comics, and the doc and Disney has this Reimagine Tomorrow, this woke nonsense. It's uh, basic DEI nonsense, basic critical race theory nonsense about how you have to reflect on your racism and how you should feel. You should work through feelings of guilt, shame, and defensiveness to understand what is beneath them and what needs to be healed. Well, the problem is you're preaching this is basically like a corrupted version of examination of conscience. So if you are a Catholic, you probably know about something called an examination of conscience, where you take this you reflect on the 10 commandments and among other rules, and you're supposed to look at the examine those and see, did I do anything wrong? Did I commit any of these sins? Am I living in a state of sin? And then you would go to confess, and this is all for preparation to go to confession, where you are healed of your sin, absolved of your sin, and told to go and sin no more, right? So, uh, but with the woke, there is no confession, there is no absolution of guilt, there is no forgiveness of sins. This is just something that you are born into, and there is no way you can escape. You can't be baptized, you can't be forgiven, because the people behind this are manipulating, are not interested in forgiveness. They are interested in vindictiveness. They are driven by envy. They are driven by a desire to control, the libido dominandi. And so this is because this is ultimately what happens when you take a political ideology and try to put religious trappings on it. It becomes a justification for power. All right. And this is, by the way, something I bring up in my critique of leftism and liberalism in my video, The Eternal Bellyachers. I point out that because they divorce um, their morality from actual virtue and goodness and make it all about this kind of freedom and equality nonsense, it just becomes a justification for power politics. And that's the fatal flaw of all liberal ideologies. And and I will get into why this is basically an outworking of liberal ideology. It's not something that lot could be said to logically follow from liberalism, but it is something that can be justified under the liberal framework. It's an alternative way of looking at it, and I'm going to go into that soon. And it's it, but I wanted to go down here and point out these things. You have the so despite Rufo claiming that he defeated Disney and by exposing them, uh, they still went ahead with Reimagine Tomorrow, and they have inclusion for everyone. At Disney, inclusion is for everyone. Reimagine Tomorrow is our way of amplifying underrepresented voices and untold stories, as well as championing the importance of accurate representation in media and entertainment. Accurate, quote unquote, because we are all greater than a single story, and we all deserve to feel seen, heard, and understood. Yeah. Okay. So Disney is committed to representation. And contrary to what Rick Riordan, yeah, and contrary to Rick Riordan, uh, this is all about the diversity and inclusion. This is not about the merits of the actor, because because Annabeth Chase this is the problem in the book, and this is the problem that people are pointing out. Annabeth Chase is um, described in the book as black. I'm not black, sorry. She's made out in the movies as black, but in the books she's described. Let me find it. Blah, 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 blah. Where is Annabeth? Annabeth. Uh, hmm. Number 5. Let's see. The blonde. Let's see. Okay, so the blonde girl. Yeah, she's described as a very blonde, tan skin girl. Um, Down at the end of the porch, two men sat across from each other on the table. Let's see. Blonde haired, spin popcorn flavor pudding. Oh yeah, she's first introduced as feeding him ambrosia, the food of the gods, and helping him out and helping Percy out with that. Um, she has curly blonde. She had curly blonde hair and sort of tan skin, basically California girl, like basic blonde-haired, gray-eyed girl. Her appearance with the gray eyes was actually supposed to reflect her lineage as the daughter of Athena. Um, in the movies, in the Percy Jackson movies, they made her a redhead in the first movie because they were combining her with a totally different character named Clarice who had red hair. But then in the second movie, they separated out the characters so that Annabeth now has blonde hair, and then because Clarice plays a major role in the second book, and so in the second Percy Jackson movie, she they have to have Clarice there, and so they separate out the characters again. The movies were terrible. Do not watch the movies. Do not watch the TV series at all because they changed Annabeth to a black person. And yeah, it's yeah. So now Rick Riordan is coming out and defending this, changing the race swapping the character because of course he is. He's always been a social justice warrior type, and as he explains in here, I mean he changed, like I said, he changed one of the major characters in his book into a gay kid, and made it part of his character that he was always angsting about how he's sexually attracted to the main character. It's really dumb, very gross. It was a very gross part of that book too. Um, but anyway, so you have Lee Jeffries is Annabeth Chase. Lee Jeffries being the actress that they chose. This post is specifically for those who have a problem with the casting of Lee Jeffries as Annabeth Chase. It's a shame such posts need to be written, but they do. First, let me be clear that I am speaking here only for myself. These thoughts are mine alone. They don't necessarily reflect or represent the opinions of any part of Disney, the TV show, the production team, or Jeffries' family. Although I bet that most of those people will just be in agreement with you because, again, you're part of this club, Rick Riordan. You are part of this ideology. The response to casting of Lee has been overwhelmingly positive and joyous. Lee brings so much energy and enthusiasm, and she will be a role model for new generations of girls who see her in her the kind of hero they want to be. So yeah, again, this is this idea of representation, right? You have to have the the black girl has to be seen as the hero. The hero has to be like a minority or underrepresented, marginalized group as part of propagation of new moral norms. Because again, that is how um, that is just how people are. Uh, so anyway, if you have a problem with this casting, however, take it up with me. You have no one else to blame. Whatever else you take from this post, we are blah, blah, blah. Bullying and harassing a child online is inexcusably wrong. Again, like all of these, he'll claim that there is some harassment in online anywhere. He'll never point to any examples of it. Um, he in these types of people, they confuse honest criticism with harassment anyway. So he says, I was clear up a year ago when we announced our first opening cast that we would be following Disney's company policy on non-discrimination. We are committed to a diverse, inclusive casting. We are committed to one, right? So it's not. This is going to this is going to seemingly contradict what he says later on in this, but it's going to make a lot of sense when we examine the underpinnings of like this woke ideology and how it interacts with meritocracy. Um, the so anyway, for every mole, blah blah blah. The casting process was long, intense, massive, and exhaustive. I'm sure it was, but I don't think that the talents of the actors was the only factor. Because again, you say it yourself, we are committed, that Disney was committed to diverse, inclusive casting. And and we saw earlier, Disney is all about, right now, it's all about amplifying underrepresented voices and untold stories and championing the importance of accurate representation in media. And by accurate representation, they mean the kind of representation that will propagate the moral norms that they believe are true. As the author, I have been clear as the author that I was looking for the best actors to inhabit and bring to life the personalities of these characters, and that physical appearance was secondary to me. We did that. We took a year to do this process thoroughly and find the best of the best. This trio is the best. Lee Jeffries is Annabeth Chase. So yes, so this is this stuck out to me. The best actors to inhabit and bring the life and the personality of the characters, and physical appearance is secondary to me. Well, this actually is a contradiction with woke ideology, and I'm going to tell you why it's a contradiction with woke ideology. Because Rick Riordan has from a 2020 2020 blog post that he deleted, but we've got the archives where he explains why he gave one of his characters feathers, and it's because she was half Cherokee, so her father was like a Cherokee man. Is Her mother is Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and it's a native and he's addressing the idea that this is a Native American stereotype, that the fact that she has feathers in her hair, and this is this is something that he defends it on the grounds that it actually happens in real life, that these people sometimes wear dumb dog outside. I'm sorry. These people actually wear feathers in their hair, blah blah blah, and then it gets down to let's see, where was it? Okay, for Piper's, here we go. For Piper's background, I started with James Mooney's book, History, Myths, and Sacred Formulas of the Cherokee. Now, Mooney was a white guy, so that's a drawback. He was an anthropologist born in 1861 who worked for the U.S. Bureau of Ethnology. And so he goes on to, so Mooney was a white guy, so that's a drawback. And he goes on, and of course, his perspective is that of a privileged outsider. right? And see, this is the key understanding of critical race theory, right? It's that race, the physical, the physical characteristic of race, it can be constitutive of a person's personality and their character, right? Because the idea of it, and the idea is that if you grew up in a certain cultural context with a certain, and you were raised with certain ideas, and you occupy this that role in society, you are going to have a very different perspective from people who are raised in different contexts. And this is actually one of the things about critical race theory that I agree with. You know, if you have a different upbringing, you will think differently. If you occupy a different role in society, and you live in a different time and place, you are going to have a different perspective. Now, what critical race theory gets wrong is that it's a relativist philosophy, meaning uh, the critical race theorists believe that you can't ever bridge that gap, which is why they have to put black people in charge of everything, because only person with that oppressed perspective can be in charge of policies in America. You can't look at things objectively because we have these biases. Now, this is actually an absurd argument because it assumes that all there are interpretations of reality, and that we can never get to any kind of objective truth. In which case, I have to wonder: do these critical race theorists think that their theory is objectively true? I, they act like it is, but that is the problem with them in a nutshell. Now, the so the point is, and so he tries to justify using Mooney's book by saying that there were let's see, it's that where is it? There was later on, it's talking about uh, Robert J. Conley. Yes. So Conley was a writer, and member of the Cherokee Nation who cites Mooney's book, the white guy who supposedly was a privileged outsider. Uh, Conley cites Mooney 92 times, and this is a book that is sanctioned by the Western Cherokee leadership as the official history of his people. So people who do not live in this progressive bubble, they can recognize that outsiders can speak objectively about their culture. They recognize that, right? They might not have the best understanding, but they can come to an understanding. They can listen to one another, and they can use reason to know the truth of things, the truths about a people, the true things about the world that relativists seem to think that doesn't exist, because apparently if you are seeing reality through interpretations of reality, then all you will get are interpretations, and you'll never see reality in itself. To give you an idea of how bad this argument is, by that logic, because we use our digestive system to digest food, we can never digest the food in itself. We will never taste the food in itself. That is how bad this argument is. All right. So going back to uh, it was a Uh, what does Cherokee have to do with Greek mythology? Well, the conceit of the Percy Jackson books is that the Greek gods and all the monsters have over time transported themselves from from Greece to Rome, to Britain, and then to America, because they always follow. Because part of the lore is that they always gravitate towards the center of Western civilization. And that's actually a theme in the book, that, you know, America is the locus of Western civilization, and this changes over time. And the gods change their values over time. The monsters, they change their tactics of how to they go after people over time. Although there are broad strokes that are similarities, and that's actually part of the humor of the book. The different creatures and monsters and gods, they update themselves to modern times, and it creates this kind of um, dissonance with the reader, where you have monsters interacting with modern technology and modern cultural norms, and you have the god Hermes operating a delivery service, things like that. All right, so it was he subsequently has to defend it because it was so patronizing. Yeah, I mean, it was seen as patronizing by people, and he has to defend it on a now deleted blog. But anyway, going back to Lee Jeffries, because he's going to make some points that contradict what he says. So when he says here, the best actors inhabit and bring to life the personalities of these characters, and the physical experience was secondary to me. No, it isn't, Rick. You acknowledge that a person's race can have an effect on their personality and their life experiences, how they interact with the world, because that's your ideology. And, you know, that's true as far as it goes. But when you change the race, and this is the problem, when you change the race of the character, that has an impact on that character. You are changing more than just the appearance, the physical appearance. You are changing how this character interacts with the world. You are changing possibly their upbringing. You're changing a lot of things, and as a result, if you have a character, well, let's just say for the sake of argument that they have this black character, this black Annabeth Chase, and they have her act like exactly like Annabeth Chase does in the books. Exactly. Um, that might create a dissonance with some of the people in the audience, especially, ironically, the people who are most familiar with how black people act, which are other black people. They'll see Annabeth Chase and they will go, wait, this isn't quite right. Right? Because it's like because that is the wrong kind of dissonance. That's the kind of dissonance you do not want to have. And that is the kind of inaccurate representation. That is not true to life. That is true to your ideology. All right. So some of you have apparently felt offended or exasperated when your objections are called out online as racist. Well, yeah, they're the only thing worse than being a racist nowadays is being a pedophile. But you would know, wouldn't you, Rick? I mean, it's considering the company you're working with right now. It is not racist, to want an actor who is accurate to the book's description of the character. Well, you think it's not? Do you think it's racist to consider Mooney's whiteness to be a disadvantage? Let's examine that statement. You are upset, disappointed, frustrated, angry because a black actor has been cast to play a character who is described as white in the books. She doesn't look the way I always imagined. Well, duh, you literally described her in the books as having a completely different appearance. You either are not aware or have dismissed Lee's years of hard work honing her craft, her talent, her tenacity, her focus, her screen presence. You've refused to believe her selection could have been based on merit without having seen her play the part. You have prejudged her, prejudiced, and decided she must have been hired simply to fill a quota or tick a diversity box. Well, I mean, that's what you say, Rick, right here. We are, you say that's what Disney did. We are committed to a diverse, inclusive casting. If it wasn't Lee Jeffries, it would have been someone else. You know, you could have made if it wasn't Lee Jeffries, Black Annabeth Chase, it would have been somebody else as Hispanic Percy Jackson. Or maybe they would have made Grover a black guy again, like they did in the movies. Um, these criticisms have come across the political spectrum left and right. Yeah, because this isn't like a white nationalist talking point. This is this is something that people of all stripes recognize is happening. We have eyes and we can see that this is a corporate nonsense inclusiveness thing. Uh, and it's and I want to stop here for a moment because it might seem to you like an obvious contradiction where he's complaining about her talent and tenacity, focus, and it couldn't have been based on merit. And at the same time, him talking about diversity and inclusion at the beginning, and how it couldn't be that she's just filling in a diversity box, right? Well, according to progressive ideology, the justification for affirmative action is because they believe that non-black people or people who are outside of your racial group cannot the person judge member of the minority group as being truly meritorious because of racial bias. And the affirmative action is basically like a political. It's supposed to tip the scales and make it so that it's supposed to counteract this bias. And he's going to talk about this. It's supposed to counteract this bias because, according to their ideology, you can't counteract this bias without this kind of top-down political control, right? You can't counteract this bias without any kind of black top-down political control because you can't ever get past your biases. Because they're relativists. They don't believe in an objective standard. Notice how he's talking about the years of hard work honing her craft. He's not saying that she's actually qualified for the job. He's saying that she worked really hard to qualify for this job. He's telling you to feel sorry for her, that, oh, she worked so hard, why are you being mean to her? It's not that she's worthy, because of course it can never be, because there is no objective standard according to these people's ideologies. Well, they might act like there is an objective standard, but the objective standard is according to whether their ideology is dominant or not. And this is actually something they gain from liberal meritocracy too. There's a great essay called The Anthropoetics of Power by Dennis Bovard, who's, by the way, Dennis Bovard, great guy. You should read his work. I actually did an interview with him a while back. Where was it? Oh, here. So Anthropoetics of Power, where he talks about victimary thinking. Basically, victimary thinking is where all ascriptive differences, that is, differences based on some presumably indelible marker of belonging to a certain group, most obviously skin color, are now framed in terms of Nazi Jew binary. Oh, I. All right, it's the doorbell ringing. You don't have to. You can ignore my dog. He's getting upset because of the doorbell ringing, but that's just the mailman. That's just the delivery person. Oh, stop moaning. Hold on. Come on. You don't need to look at me. You don't need to. Oh, poor baby. My poor baby dog. He gets so upset because he wants to go out and greet and bark at the person. Ah, no, sorry. No dog. Don't. Sit. Good boy. All right, down, 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 down. Good boy. Down. Okay. All right. Hopefully that'll calm him down. Anyway, where was I? Uh, be be very very quiet. I'm those rascally racists. Yeah, I mean they are about searching for hidden racism, right? All right. So now because everything is fit into now that all differences, ascriptive differences, are fit into a Nazi Jew binary. Now anybody who there's all of this can be plugged into. Once the Victimary model is in place, no real limits can be set to it. The oppression of women, of homosexuals, of the transgendered can all be plugged in to produce a public and political discourse in which to refuse to bake a cake for a gay wedding or to open women's bathrooms to any male who says he is really a woman is make oneself morally indistinguishable from Adolf Eichmann. Right. So, and it talks about how victimary thinking insinuates itself into the complacent meritocratic discourse. It turns out that we can't take for granted that the GRE and grades in high school and college should determine who occupies which position in the social order. Standardized tests are biased, and different students have differential access to education. Even if standardized tests and grades do accurately measure merit, they simply ratify pre-existing inequalities, which therefore must be addressed through more fundamental transformations. If whites do better than blacks on such tests, for example, it really just means that whites have unjustly more money, live in better neighborhoods, and go to better schools than blacks, and therefore all of that needs to be reconfigured before we can rely on tests and grades. And as a result, liberal meritocratic thinking has not been very effective in putting up a resistance to all of this, doing little more than acting scandalized at the whole phenomenon. And that's really the point I wanted to address here, is that to these people, when they choose people, when this whole diversity and inclusion and equity, this affirmative action agenda, this is meritocracy. Because what they're doing is they are clumsily producing a top-down counterbalance to the bottom-up phenomena of prejudice and systemic racism. And that is what they are doing. And so it becomes the hunt for the secret racism in the deep depths of our soul. To go back to Rick Riordan, right? The Jeffries is you have decided that I couldn't possibly mean what I have said, that the true nature of the character lies in their personality. You feel I must have been coerced, brainwashed, bribed, threatened, whatever. Or I, as a white male author, would never have chosen a black actor for the part of this canonically white girl. No, this is where Rick is objectively wrong. Nobody I know claims that he was brainwashed, bribed, coerced, threatened, whatever. He was an SJW from day one, and he's just kind of a hanger on for this ideology, and that's how it is. He's part of this club. You refuse to believe me, the guy who wrote the books and created these characters, when I say that these actors are perfect for the roles because of the talent they bring and the way they use their auditions to expand, improve, and electrify the lines they were given. Once you see Lee as Annabeth, she will become exactly the way you imagine Annabeth, assuming that you give her that chance. But you refuse to credit that this may be true. So he's just waxing poetic here. Um, it's not. I wonder if these people, it's kind of a cliche. Um, it's kind of cliche to ask, well, what if the shoe was on the other foot? What if they race swapped Black Panther to be like a blonde, like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy? What if they made Black Panther like that? It's not really. I mean, that's kind of a shallow critique because we all know why they wouldn't condone that. It's because they have this political agenda. But it really but those cliches get thrown out there because it's easy to respond. It's an easy way to respond to this kind of gaslighting, and because this is what it is. It's gaslighting. He's speaking out of both sides of his mouth, trying to claim that this is the way Annabeth has always been. I didn't just when I wrote Annabeth, describing her as like a blonde-haired, gray-eyed white girl. That was the way. That was just false consciousness, friends. You were just imagining that. The true Annabeth Chase, deep and down, was a black person all along. Friends, that is racism. You are judging her appropriateness for this role solely and exclusively on how she looks. That is racism. Well, judging people on how for this role exclusively on how they look um is not racism. Otherwise, it's not. It's in fact, racism is just a buzzword. It doesn't really mean much of anything. It's just at this point. I mean, I'd love to reconstruct this word because there are people out there who express actual racial hatred. Are people who commit injustices on the basis of race. But I can't call those people racist. You know why? Because everybody and their mother is racist now. In fact, you're going to say this that to say, the Boston Globe about comma innis, implicit bias nonsense, and say to say a person doesn't have bias is to say that person isn't human. It's how we navigate the world based on what we're taught in our own personal histories. Yeah, yeah. Uh, Racism, colorism isn't something we have or don't have. I have it. You have it. We all do. We're all racist, guys. We're all racists, and also racism is evil and must be eliminated. And if you are an evil racist, then you should be fired from your job, right? But racism is everywhere, guys. It's like original sin. It's like we're all racists. We're all sinners. Uh, but unlike the Christian church, there is no forgiveness. There's no way of becoming perfect because this is how they control you, right? This is the Mott and Bailey, right? They'll claim this implicit bias, everybody is racist, and then they will that's the one side, and then the other side is, castigating people for their colorism, for their racism, and how they're such a terrible person. The core message of Percy Jackson has always been that difference is strength. There is power in plurality. The things that distinguish us from one another are often our marks of individual greatness. You should never judge someone by how well they fit your preconceived notions. That neurodivergent kid who has failed out of 6 schools, for instance, may well be the son of Poseidon. Anyone can be a hero. And he goes on to say, it fully honors the spirit of Percy Jackson Olympians, taking the bedtime story I told my son 20 years ago to make him feel better about being neurodivergent and improving on it, so that kids all over the world can continue to see themselves as heroes in Camp Half-Blood. Right. So that is that. Right. So skin color, and that's it. That is that. Samuel L. Jackson did good as Nick Fury in the Avengers. Well, that's the thing, right? Do you even remember? Most people who got introduced to the character of Nick Fury, including myself, most people who watched the Avengers had never heard of Nick Fury before they watched the Avengers MCU, including me, by the way. I am not familiar with Nick Fury. So when they put Samuel L. Jackson in the role, that is a different character from the Nick Fury in the comics. He might have similarities, but he's basically an alternate universe version of Nick Fury. He's not. It's not a faith. The MCU is not a faithful adaptation. They did the race swap. Yeah, Nick Fury being a black man years ago in the comics. Well, okay, I guess. I guess so. They race swapped him in the comics too. Uh, I mean, Skin Painter doesn't always produce a bad product. Well, that is true. It doesn't necessarily produce a bad product, right? But it does mean that it's not going to be a faithful adaptation. That's the whole critique is based on that. Whatever Percy Jackson, whatever um, whatever else this Percy Jackson series is, and I think it's going to go the way of all the other MCU Netflix original movies, like Disney Plus original movies that they've been producing. Um, it's going to be garbage. It's going to be filled with social justice politics. They're going to have this in there, and but if it doesn't, if it turns out not to be super focused on that, which again I doubt, because the author is coming out and saying that this is now the core theme of Percy Jackson. The core of Percy Jackson is all about um, addressing neurodiversity topics, racism and sexism and all that. If it's and I mean, if it's not all about that, if it is going to be all about that, then it is going to be a bad product. Because again, these people don't know how to create good propaganda anymore. They don't know how to. They don't know how to insert these messages into the story without making the story bad. Because they're just bad at telling stories. You can look at anybody from Comicsgate. I looked into neurodiversity, and it's all Democrat politics. Let's talk about neurodiversity, Ben, because I got into neurodiversity when I was a young man. Around the same time, I started reading the Percy Jackson series, because it's basically the social justice warrior infiltration of the field of psychology. It's basically applying the whole model, the victimary model, to people with autism or ADHD or ADD or whatever mental condition you have, mental disability. So let's see. Neurodiversity. What is neurodiversity? Neurodiversity describes the idea that people experience and interact with the world around them in many different ways. There is no one right way of thinking, learning, and behaving, and differences are not viewed as deficits. See, here you have right on display, you have the idea that because people experience and interact with the world around them in many different ways, there is no one right way of, there are no right or wrong. There's no right and wrong ways of thinking, learning, and behaving. And there can never be, uh, differences are not viewed as deficits. So again, this is just the woke ideology in a nutshell. This is the victimary model. Um, the word neurodiversity refers to the diversity of all people. The diversity of all people. So, because everybody thinks differently, it's diverse. But it is often used in the context of autism, of autism spectrum disorder, as well as other neurological or developmental conditions such as ADHD or learning disabilities. The neurodiversity movement emerged during the 1990s, which is where, coincidentally, when the victimary model started emerging, aiming to increase acceptance and inclusion of all people while embracing neurological differences. Um, well, that's the thing, right? Except racists and Christians, because you still call us mentally ill, but that's considered a bad thing according to your ideology. You see, the thing is, relativists are never consistent because you can never be a consistent relativist. Through online platforms, more and more autistic people were able to connect and form self-advocacy movement. See, right here, it's a you form a community of like-minded people, and this community has and then this movement community starts promoting equality and inclusion at the behest of uh, people like Judy Singer, an Australian sociologist. Uh, um, yeah, very stereotypical, very very typical of these types of movements. Right? They all follow the same pattern, and it's just applying to different areas of life: race, sex, um, sexual orientation, transgenderism. Uh, they've applied, and now they're applying, and then they started applying this to neurodiversity. And I got into this, by the way. I was a total social justice warrior. I was so into this. Yes, inclusive, non-judgmental language. And while many disability advocacy organizations prefer person first language, a person with autism, a person with Down syndrome, some research has found that the majority of the autistic community prefers identity first language, an autistic person. Therefore, rather than making assumptions, it is best to ask directly about the person's preferred language, and how they want to be addressed, their preferred pronouns. You will address me as Zim, as an attack helicopter, because that is my preferred pronouns. You see, this is all about the kind of language policing, because this is, again, they are proposing a new moral norm in society based on their political agenda. This is a new moral norm, a new moral paradigm that they are imposing from the top down, and they want you all to follow it. And they're not very, and there is not, they're not very tolerant of people who exist outside of the spectrum, outside of their views, especially if you yourself are supposedly part of these marginalized groups, which is what I found very quickly, right? And to give you an idea of how bad these people are, right? You want to know? Actually, I'm not going to bother asking you. I'm going to tell you because I've told this story before, right? Um, so I used to be part of this community, this neurodiversity community, and one of the things that they are about is combating stereotypes. They are all about combating stereotypes about neurodiverse diverse people, because of course are stereotypes that are that go against the kinds of ways that they want you to think about these people are bad, because they make people feel bad. We don't want that. We don't want to make people feel bad. Uh, so I was a member of this community, and I was friends with somebody who was writing a story that had a character that had that had autism, and we were both she and I were autistic. She was writing a story that had an autistic character based on herself, and one of the things that these Tumblrite feminists were attacking her over was the was the fact that this character was stereotypical. It didn't represent what a true autistic person was. It was offensive stereotyping, even though it was based on her and it was autobiographical. It was basically a self-insert. Uh, well, eh, I guess Rick Riordan is right when he says that we all have our biases, eh? I absolutely despise this ideology. I have nothing but contempt for it. It is evil, and the people who promote this are promoting evil, and they are themselves evil, and that they need to repent of their sins and gets and they should repent of their sins, go to church, and then go and touch grass because they need reality. Uh, all right. Real life is too stereotypical. Ban real life. Exactly. I mean, you say that these people do want a top-down revolution of society, and they will go to war with normal people and with reality itself to promote their worldview. And this is, by the way, this is why they have to claim that everybody is. You notice the insidiousness of saying that everybody's biased, right? The insidiousness of that is to say that they're basically trying to say that human nature has this flaw, and that flaw is it's biased, and we need to excise this bias through diversity programs, through politicized programs, through affirmative action. We have to eliminate this bias. Well, okay. Well, I mean, number one, if you want to claim that this bias is a sin, then no amount of affirmative action or diversity and inclusion training is going to erase sin. You can mitigate it, but you can never erase it because sin can only be done away with through baptism and through the sacraments and through praying to Jesus. That is how you get rid of. That is how you do away with sin. You have to repent of it in a, and you have to receive God's grace. That is the key here, though, right? It's not something that we do, right? God has us do things to show our out, has us do things, but it's not something, but the grace that saves us from our sins is not something we merit. It's something freely given to us, right? All right. So, uh, and so that's one error. Another error is, well, whether bias is even is a sin. I mean, but your entire ideology says that we are all biased, and that there's no way we can get to any kind of objective truth, why are people culpable of this? Why are people culpable of their biases? Uh, it just again, this is all a shallow justification for political power. Um, a lot of very autistic people could become much more high functioning with proper training, especially at a young age. Yes, yes, and um, I know that there are right. I I was someone who was like that. I became less autistic as I grew up. That it does happen, right? But you gotta train them, and especially this kind of thing is harmful to people because it teaches them a very bad way of viewing the world where they can never empathize with people who are different from them, right? And that's the ultimate irony of this relativist position. By saying that we can that these different positions can never come to an objective truth, you're basically saying that there is no rational way we can interact with people. There is no nothing we can ever agree on. Yeah, I guess yeah, and I'm going to leave with some good news though. Good news. We do have people pushing back against Disney and its nonsense. We have people like Josh Hawley who are saying we want to strip Disney of copyright to Mickey Mouse. Big if true. All right, you know, Disney. I mean, the Congress has been in the pocket of these giant corporations for a very long time. When it, especially on the issue of copyright. They've been extending Disney's copyright for years and years and years and years and years. But if but if they were to destroy the copyright of Disney, then that would set them back because what that would do is it would take away their prestige. Because if Mickey Mouse belongs to everybody, then Disney will not have the prestige it does as being the sole owner of Mickey Mouse. And let us hope that this goes somewhere. Although I don't know if this will work. I don't know if this will work or not. And you have, especially since the New York Post, you have the Post editorial board saying that it's a blatant abuse of power. Oh, cry me a river, right? This is this so um copyrights now run too long. But this is blatant partisan payback. Exactly what Americans don't need from Congress. Ugh, ugh. I mean, this is why, unless we have, yeah, unless we have some kind of change in this, we are not going to. Let's see. Uh, Republicans backed Disney's copyright expansions in the past. This is Republicans' fault, specifically former Attorney General John Ashcroft. Yeah, exactly. This is why the New York Post, conservative outlet, is bashing Josh Hawley for going against the party line. Just like Roe v. Wade, the case of Eldred versus Ashcroft ruled retroactive copyright extensions to be constitutional was a 7-2 decision directly against the Constitution. Well, that's the thing, right? If you have a Supreme Court and the Supreme Court can has the authority, has the magisterial authority to decide what is constitutional or not, well, there's nothing stopping a Supreme Court from just declaring it arbitrarily that their new ideology will read into the Constitution something something that wasn't there originally. Um, and that's the thing, right? Even if you were to replace all the Supreme Court justices with conservative types, you're going to get there's still all of these lower courts who have these views. You have entire universities churning out people who have these views. You have the media who have these views that are going to pressure people. You have bureaucrats and other government departments. It's a mess. It is a mess, and I think right these I think if people want to push back on this, they need to either find a way to get these woke people out of office, uh, out of office. You either get these people making the bad decisions out of office, or you set up your own alternative, which is the whole parallel institution thing that a lot of neo-reactionaries advocate for. Right. Okay. Conservative justice on the wrong side. I believe they've been on the wrong side of it for years, and I think it's because of their kind of, quite frankly, if it's good for business, it's good for the free market type of attitude that they've been having. Um, do they understand their own logic? Well, I mean, they understand their own logic. The problem is that it's inconsistent because the ideology is inconsistent. And that's the thing about inconsistent ideologies. If you have a logically incoherent worldview, then to be consistent to that worldview is to be inconsistent. Uh, because they're consistently inconsistent, as paradoxical as that sounds. They're inconsistent in a very predictable way. That it's an idea. Um, it isn't good for the market in general. You're right. Anyway, I'm going to be signing off soon. Any more comments from the comment section that want to uh, any more comments? Any questions? Um, I know that I'm going to be making more blog posts on morality and ethics and religion. I have a blog post. My latest blog post is about right wing neo paganism, and it's basically like a defense of Christianity. I try to be I come at it from a Catholic angle, but I try to be very ecumenical, and I defend Protestants and Orthos too, in that from the charges that neo pagans fling at them constantly. We should do a stream together sometime. Yeah, you can hit me up on Telegram, hit me up on Discord, hit me up on Twitter. I'm there. I'm on all three platforms. Feel free to go on there. All right. So I'm going to sign off now. God bless you, everybody, and I hope you have a nice day. Ave Maria.